Welcome back to Feed the Post. I am your host, Joe Jackson, and Big Ten schedule is finally announced for basketball. Felt like it took 5 years for that to be announced, but I'm just going to go through kind of all the schedules, I think, is my plan. I don't really have like a set order or anything like that, but just kind of go through the Big Ten schedules, see what's kind of teams are looking at. I know there's a lot of differences, especially with the four new teams and just how that's all going to work with travel, with different pods, and who's playing who. So, kind of off the top though, we'll start with like just some overview that I saw from the Big Ten announcements, and that is that one, obviously there is three teams that each team plays twice. So those are just based on who you play. All the incoming Pac-12 teams, they will play each other twice just to limit travel. Every Central and East Coast team has one West Coast trip where they will play either the LA schools or Oregon and Washington. I think it was interesting that like in terms of the pods for the West Coast teams coming to Central and Eastern time zones, it wasn't a set like these are pods like Illinois, Northwestern, Purdue and IU, Michigan and Michigan State. There definitely was a lot of overlap and like Maryland and Rutgers or Maryland and Penn State type. But it wasn't like set in stone. I think one of the schools was Purdue and Northwestern. There's other schools that play differently. And I think Nebraska and Iowa are kind of those one school or the two schools that can kind of be thrown in as like, hey, you can play at them and at home in the same week, and it's going to be fine. So it's going to be interesting to see how they balance that, how they balance travel, and all of that. So I think my plan, I'm just going to kind of go alphabetically through these teams. I assume I'm banking on all of these teams having had posted graphics at this point. And we'll start with Illinois. So Illinois at Northwestern versus Wisconsin to open up in December. I think in terms of December games, that's probably two of the better ones you can get. They are going to start their January with the West Coast trip of Oregon, Washington, Penn State, USC, at IU, at Michigan State versus Maryland versus Northwestern, at Nebraska versus Ohio State, at Rutgers, at Minnesota versus UCLA versus Michigan State, at Wisconsin versus Iowa, at Michigan versus Purdue. Looking through that, I want to put the caveat that every single team is going to have a gauntlet. Like you're going to look at every team is going to have a certain stretch of like, man, that's a tough stretch right there. And obviously, this is all based on preseason is expectations, and that's going to change as we get into the season. But like when I look at Illinois' schedule, obviously opening up in December, great. At Oregon, at Washington, I think that's going to be the better combo. Our teams are going to rather play those two than UCLA, USC. Versus Penn State versus USC, those first 6 games, like that's 3 of them being on the road. Illinois probably wants to be 5-1 at worst out of that. But then you get into at IU, at Michigan State. So like there's a stretch, right? At IU, at Michigan State, or versus Maryland. That's going to be a tougher stretch. But I kind of like this schedule for Illinois. Who they play Purdue once at the end of the season. I'm trying to see who their double teams are. Northwestern, Michigan State, I think, and one other. It's not popping off the top of my head. Oh, Wisconsin. Yeah. So Northwestern, Michigan State, Wisconsin is your double teams. I think that's pretty solid in general. Yeah, I think that's a pretty it's a pretty good schedule, I think, for Illinois. We'll jump to Indiana now as I pull that up. Kalen Krettel says the only way to really tell who's the best is around robin, but with the addition of teams, most teams only see each other once now. SMH, yeah. I mean, in an ideal world, it is a round robin, but that'd be 34 games. That is more than what's even just allowed period in the regular season. So obviously, unfortunately, that can't happen. It's going to be a bigger factor of like, who do you play at home? Who are you playing twice? Who are you playing once? And it's going to be interesting. So jumping to Indiana, Minnesota at Nebraska for the December games. That's you can't ask for too much of a better draw than that, to be honest. Home against Rutgers to open up January 2nd. That's going to be a very, very fun game. It'll be interesting because that is the first game post kind of Christmas break. At Penn State, home against USC. At Iowa, home against Illinois. At Ohio State, at Northwestern, versus Maryland, at Purdue, at Wisconsin, Michigan, at Michigan State. Then they have a 3-game home stretch of UCLA, Purdue, Penn State, They have their West Coast trip very late in the season at Washington, at Oregon, and then finish off the season with Ohio State at home. So, like I said, that December stretch right there, Minnesota and Nebraska, I think that's a good way to start the season. Their double games are Purdue, Penn State, and another school, Ohio State. So Purdue, Penn State, Ohio State. I think that's solid. Obviously, Purdue is going to should be good. Um, Penn State Penn State will be feisty, and Penn State has had IU's number a bit at times. Ohio State is going to be very much up in the air. So in terms of double games, I think that's going to be kind of average, a good team, and then some teams that have some questions but could be good. At Michigan State, which will be tough. They have Illinois at home, which is obviously good for them. So I don't hate the IU schedule either. Yeah, and like I said, I don't think like there's not going to be too much difference in terms of what's a tough and what's a not tough schedule, just because you're playing a lot of the same games, just whether it's home or away now. But both of those schedules, I don't think that they are the absolute worst, and there isn't like too many insane stretches. For Iowa, Northwestern and Michigan in December. They got Wisconsin, Nebraska. So I guess I'll do it like this. So they have Northwestern and Michigan in December. Two teams with a lot of questions from not returning a lot from last season. Their double games: Nebraska, Northwestern, and Wisconsin. Nebraska, Northwestern, and Wisconsin. That's gonna be for me an early candidate for probably having one of the easier schedules in terms of the double games. I think there's a chance Northwestern and Wisconsin both really struggle. Northwestern themselves also, they're going to be kind of up in the air. They could be struggling as well. So I think Iowa catches a break there. Looking at home away, they're at Illinois, at Rutgers, at Ohio State. Their West Coast trip is USC, UCLA. They do have a stretch of Rutgers, Maryland, Oregon. That's not the most fun, but no, this is an interesting schedule too. Like I said, I think that in a system right now with so much overlap and there not being maybe a ton of differentiation in terms of scheduling, I think that who they play the double games, that's probably pretty good turnout for Iowa. Jumping to Maryland, their December games, probably out of the four, probably the toughest we've seen so far. Home against Ohio State, then at Purdue. Not the most fun. They also start their January trip with the West Coast trip at Washington, at Oregon. Then kind of looking through who are their double teams. And so their double teams, Northwestern, Northwestern. I have to do this on the fly as I just look at these like graphics that each team's pulling out. So it's not just like, I'm trying to have to match up these names really quick. So Northwestern, who else is there? What? I will figure this out. Northwestern, Nebraska, and Ohio State. There it is. Those are their teams that are the doubles. Northwestern, Nebraska. I already mentioned two teams that maybe could struggle a bit. And then Ohio State. I mean, Ohio State's also a team that for me right now, would have towards the bottom half of the Big Ten. So not a bad draw there. That means, even all four of these haven't been too bad. So there's definitely going to be some teams that get some very, very tough double matchups soon. The road games at Illinois, at Indiana isn't great. At Illinois, at Indiana, at Purdue, not the most fun. They do have UCLA at home, and Michigan State at home. But in terms of home away, probably a little bit tougher schedule there for Maryland. But they're double buys, or not double buys, but double games, who they play twice, not bad at all. Jumping to Michigan. Let's see. So their Big Ten schedule is out now. Is this right? Oh, no, I misread. Okay, their December games. I think one difference is every team's going to play 2 December games now. So at Wisconsin, home against Iowa. I think getting Iowa at home is good. At Wisconsin, probably also good in December. They start their January on West Coast trip at USC, at UCLA. And their double teams are Purdue, Michigan State, and Rutgers. That's tough. Purdue, Michigan State, Rutgers as your double games. That's definitely the toughest schedule I've seen out of the 5 so far. I should make a note of this. We'll see how it ends up. But Michigan would probably be one. Sorry, I'm catching up on this. And okay. So yeah, Michigan, those double games, Purdue, Rutgers, MSU, those are going to be 3 of the top 5 to 6 teams in the Big Ten preseason. Obviously, things can change once we get in the year. That's very tough. I think their December schedule bounces a little bit. At Wisconsin is probably one of the better games you can get on the road, at least in early December as of right now. They go at USC, at UCLA, which I don't know. I don't know which one's going to be better or worse in terms of the West Coast trips. Let's see. What are some other? They're at Indiana, at Ohio State. Yes, I mean that's not too bad. At Indiana is obviously tough, but you have Illinois at home, Maryland at home, Oregon at home. So very tough double bye, but I think their home away split's not bad. Outside of that, it's just the double game is going to be that's the toughest one I've definitely seen so far. Jumping to Michigan State. At Minnesota, home against Nebraska for the December. That's really good start for them. Who are their double teams? I know they have Purdue, they have Michigan, and Illinois. That's also not the most fun. Purdue and Illinois and Michigan. That's probably a little bit better than Michigan State or than Michigan's for Michigan State's, but still not fun having Purdue and Illinois both. Those are 2 top 4 teams preseason. They're on the road at USC, at UCLA for their West Coast trip. Looking also at their road games at Rutgers, which is going to be at Madison Square Garden, which is going to be a lot of fun. At Northwestern, nothing too crazy. At Maryland, I think they get Indiana at home. They get Oregon at home. Yeah, not too bad, but the double games definitely them and Michigan State definitely the toughest so far that I've seen. So 6 of them down. This is just a very rough. I'm very very rough kind of strength of schedule that I'll have. I would say Michigan's the toughest, then MSU, Indiana, Maryland, Illinois, Iowa so far, but still 12 teams to get through. Jump to Minnesota, and I need to pull that up. So, okay, Minnesota's. Let's see. Theirs is released. Their opening December, not fun. It is going to be home against MSU, at IU. Their first 3 games. I mean, the January 2nd is Purdue, but home against MSU, at IU, home against Purdue. Not great to start. Let's see who their double games are. They are going to be at USC, at UCLA. Their double games. I should have some of these probably memorized because of the overlap, but MSU is one for sure. Penn State's, and there's one more. Michigan State, Penn State. Who is their other? Oh, and Wisconsin. There it is. Sorry. Like I said, I'm looking at these graphics that teams put out, and that's kind of what I'm basing this on. So I'm having to figure this out on the fly. Michigan State, Penn State, Wisconsin. I think that's a pretty good one. Michigan State's obviously tough. Penn State and Wisconsin projected to be towards the bottom of the Big Ten. So that's not bad. They have Purdue at home, which is great. Illinois at home. So that means they're at IU. Like I said, they're at Rutgers. Not too bad. At Iowa. Probably, I probably would put it just a little bit tougher than Iowa's right now is where I'm going to slot it, but not a terrible schedule. The opening is tough, but the double games make up for it a bit. But that's also like if you start out 0-3, now you're staring down Ohio State in your 4th game. Like it can go 0-4, it can go downhill quickly from there. So be interesting to monitor that. Nebraska, I remember Nebraska, their first 6 games brutal. Let me see if they have something posted. There it is. Yep. So December games. I'm just going to read through the first 6 games. At MSU, home against IU, home against UCLA, at Iowa, at Purdue, home against Rutgers. and then at Maryland too. Like that's a brutal first 6-7 games to start the year, and for a team that has a lot of new players, that could go downhill very quickly. I think I'm not saying it will, but it definitely could. There are double games: Iowa, Maryland, and Maryland, and another team that's just not popping right now. Who else are they playing twice? Thank you. Ohio State. Yep, that is popping now. I appreciate that. Definitely, that's from Jacob Bigelow. He was featured on Feed the Post. Go check that out. Go check out his channel as well. But yeah, Ohio State as the other one. So like I said, the 6-game stretch to start brutal, but the double bye of the teams we just said. Yeah, I don't know. I think I can't get over the opening 6 games. I think that's just so tough. It's going to be tough to overcome because then even after that, it's USC, Wisconsin, Illinois. Like, and I understand you can say this about most schedules, like, right? Like everybody's just kind of has a gauntlet at times. Ohio State, Maryland, Iowa, those are 3 teams that kind of sit in the middle of the pack, kind of ranging in the middle of the pack for me, upper middle to lower middle. So I don't think it's like their double games isn't the absolute worst, but their opening schedule is absolutely brutal. Maybe they get a little bit of relief towards the end. Minnesota, Ohio State, Iowa, Penn State in there as well. So gonna be, yeah, we'll see. I like I said, if they can come out of that initial 6 games like 3-3 even, I think there should be a lot of hope for that team. Then at that point, if they're able to do that, we'll jump to Northwestern now. So what are we, like 8 teams through or something like that? I'm trying to not make this a 3-hour podcast. So Northwestern, I like Northwestern's graphic a lot. This is one of the better. I should have rated these graphics too. But December at Iowa, home against Illinois. Not that that's a. I think that's a tough opening stretch. I think Iowa's going to be pretty good this year. They're double games. Iowa. Oh man, this can be a tougher one to decipher though for sure. Iowa for sure. Let's see. Their road trip is Washington and Oregon. So Iowa, Maryland, and who is this last one? It's just not. It's just not showing up. It's not registering in my brain. I really don't. It's not popping. So we'll figure it out eventually. But they are at Purdue, at Illinois. That's not great. They do have IU at home, which obviously is good. Yeah, I think the opening slate at Iowa, home against Illinois, at Penn State, at Purdue, home Michigan State. Not the most fun opening, but let's see. They get Washington and Oregon is their road trip. They get Washington, Oregon, Nebraska, Ohio State, Minnesota, Iowa as what 6 of their last 8 games. Then UCLA, Maryland. That closing stretch isn't too terrible. Wisconsin and USC even before that, I think isn't the worst. So yeah, I don't think it's a bad schedule at all. I think it's probably towards the easier side of the difficulty that I've seen so far from Big Ten teams. Probably not the easiest, but definitely towards the easier side. Let's see, I'll slot them in there. And then, yeah, we'll jump to the next one. That third team still just not popping out to me of who they play twice. I don't know. My bad on that. Oregon is up next. So the first of the Pac-4 teams that we will see, or that I will have gone over now. Let me pull up their graphic. Washington isn't Big Ten though. I mean, they are though. They are. That is the world we live in now. All right. So the December trips for these West Coast teams, they are all staying like on the West Coast. So Oregon's at USC, home against UCLA. Let's see. Can I figure out who their double teams are? Oh no, for Oregon, it's all the West Coast teams. So West Coast teams all are going to play each other twice. I think it's probably not too bad. It's right because UCLA is tough. USC could be tough, and Washington's going to be at the bottom. Um, so it's probably not bad. It's probably right in the middle. Let's see who kind of they have home or road. What is their neutral site? I assume the yellow's home. So they have Illinois, Purdue at home, Illinois, Purdue, IU all at home, Rutgers at home. Yeah, that's a good break right there. So that means they're at Michigan State. That's a really good break for them. Illinois, Purdue, Rutgers, IU all at home. That's, what? Probably three of the top like five-ish teams preseason, something like that. Four of the top six preseason teams, something like that. Obviously, they play UCLA home and away. That's another team that's up there. So, really good break for them in terms of just where they fall of home and away schedules. And I'm curious to see if that should be the case then for Washington as well. And then UCLA, USC, maybe they will have tougher ones. Is how that would break out. I don't know. We'll find out as we go. Jump into Ohio State. They okay. So December games at Maryland versus Rutgers. And then their doubles is Nebraska for sure. I remember. Their road trip is at USC at UCLA. Am I able to spot this? Probably not. They have Indiana, Nebraska, and one other. Yeah, if it doesn't come to me right away, I'm just going to move on, which I think I'm going to do here. So, Indiana, Nebraska. Obviously, Indiana is a tough one to draw twice. They're at Purdue, which isn't obviously you'd rather be home for them. But let's see. Maryland's the other one. So Maryland, Indiana, Nebraska. I think that's one of the tougher. Indiana's good. Maryland's pretty good. Nebraska probably toward middle bottom. So not probably the toughest. Like I don't think it's Michigan State level, but probably is that next one after that. From what I've seen so far, at Purdue is tough. Also, shout out Ohio State's non-conference schedule. It's going to be a fun one. Texas right off the bat. Texas A&M. They also have Kentucky. Even Indiana State's going to be good. Or should be a good game. At Illinois, at Purdue, not fun. I think this is going to be one of the tougher schedules probably in the Big Ten. Jumping to Penn State. Let's see what they are at. Is it just not posted? They did a video. Oh, wait, there's a link. Let's see. Shout out Penn State. I also shout out, we'll talk about Rutgers in a sec when it comes. Their video is fire for announcing their schedule. I mean, I'm trying to find it. It's just not. Penn State doesn't have. There we go. Okay, so now I finally have it for Penn State. Home against Purdue, at Rutgers for their December. That's tough off the bat. Like those are going to be two top 5 teams. At Rutgers, obviously that's going to be a tough place to play. Let me see if I can get this in an easier way to read. Grid list. There we go. So now looking at kind of the rest of their schedule. Their road trip is UCLA and USC. I highly doubt I'm going to be able to identify which of their teams is twice, or which of their, which of the Big Ten teams they play twice. Rutgers they play twice. That's a little tough. Who else do they play twice? I don't think this one's going to come to me the way that this is worded, but just kind of looking through Purdue and Rutgers to open is tough. At UCLA, USC, I think for me is going to be the tougher road trip out of the two possible. I'm really high on UCLA, and then I also think that USC can be very competitive and could be a surprisingly good team as well. Looking through, nothing else really. At Illinois is something that I guess that stands out. Nothing at Indiana stands out. So, I mean, those are two games that are going to be tougher. At Michigan State also. So they have some tougher road games. I'm trying to see. Yeah, I don't see anything else standing out. So they play Indiana twice. That is one team that I was able to pick up. Yeah, I think tough opening schedule for sure of Purdue, Rutgers, Northwestern, Indiana, um, and Illinois after that too. That's actually that's a really tough opening 5 games. Oregon, Michigan State, Rutgers. That's a really tough front half. Their back half's definitely easier, and so this could be a team that we see maybe they start 2-5 or something like that, 2-6 in the Big Ten, and then they end up. There's a chance they could end up closer to like 8-12, 9-11. They're playing their best basketball at the end of the season type team. I wouldn't be completely shocked if that was the case. Minnesota is another team that pops out twice. So Indiana tough. Minnesota should be one of the teams you probably want to play twice as of right now. So kind of balances out there. Yeah, probably middle of the pack ish schedule would be my guess ish. Um, is kind of where I think I will put Penn State for now. So let me just make sure I have right. Should have 6 teams left. Yep, and that's exactly where I'm at. So next up is going to be Purdue. Purdue was one of the ones I focused on definitely as it was getting unveiled, and their closing 5 games is going to be wild. So for Purdue, their December games, at Penn State, home against Maryland. I think that's a pretty good draw for them. Their double games, Rutgers, Indiana, and Michigan State, I believe. Unless I'm no, it should be Michigan State, right? Um, I was pretty confident. Oh no, it's Michigan, not Michigan State. My bad on that. So yeah, Michigan, Indiana, and Rutgers. I think that's one of the tougher doubles you can get, and that's Indiana and Rutgers, both top 5 teams. Michigan is a team that very easily could be a top 5 team, especially by the time that they play them. Um, you look through the schedule, though, I think they start out probably a little bit easier. Penn State, Maryland, Minnesota, Northwestern, at Rutgers, obviously tough. Nebraska, at Washington, at Oregon, Ohio State, Michigan. But then kind of their back half is really tough. IU, so home against IU at Iowa, USC at Michigan, Wisconsin, and then their final 5, which is going to potentially make or break who wins the Big Ten, to be honest. At Michigan State, at Indiana, home against UCLA, home against Rutgers, at Illinois. When you lump Purdue in with those 5 teams of MSU, IU, UCLA, Rutgers, Illinois, which are their final 5 games, I think those are the 6 best teams probably in the Big Ten as of right now. Obviously, it's a long season. It's probably unlikely that that is exactly how it plays out, where those are the 5 best teams plus Purdue. But as of right now, when we're looking at it, like that is the toughest closing stretch. I think they have probably one of the tougher, not the toughest, but one of the tougher kind of double games that they could get. Obviously, that's going to happen with IU, and that's a very good thing because you want to play IU twice. Rutgers is going to be fun. They could be good. We'll see exactly how it works out, but that closing 5 stretch is going to be interesting, and I will definitely be monitoring kind of how they're playing going into that. Can they afford to lose a couple, or is it going to be more of like they need to get a lot of wins right then? So yeah, moving on to Rutgers. Shout out Rutgers video. They did like an NBA Street Volume Edition thing, which definitely go check. I think I can link it right if I just do this. I'm going to post it right now. Um, I think it's really cool, and I love the NBA Street games growing up. So shout out them for that. Looking at their Big Ten schedule at Ohio State, first Penn State in terms of December. I think that's a pretty good draw. Not the best, but a pretty good one for sure. We already just mentioned they play Purdue twice. Their road trip is Oregon and Washington for the West Coast trip. Their double games, Penn State, Purdue, and Michigan. So a good team, a team that's in that middle clump of like, hey, they could be good. They can maybe struggle a bit. We'll see. And then Penn State obviously is a team that's projected to probably be towards the bottom, but I still think is going to be very feisty. looking at besides that, at Indiana, home against Illinois, so those kind of balance out a bit. You at least probably want to split those a little, like 1-1. Home against Michigan State, so they're at Nebraska, at Northwestern, at Maryland. Yeah, I actually I like this draw for Rutgers. I think probably one of the better ones so far. Probably the best one out of a team that's projected to be in the top half of the Big Ten. I think right now the three easiest. Well, Iowa, I would project Iowa in the top half, but I think the three easiest for me right now is Northwestern, Minnesota, and Iowa. Rutgers is probably right above that. I like that schedule. I like that draw. The one thing is that maybe worries me a little bit is so they have their December games, which is I don't think the toughest games at Ohio State home against Penn State. But then to open up the rest of the Big Ten play at Indiana is January 2nd, home against Wisconsin, which Wisconsin will be what they are, but it's at IU. So at IU, home against Wisconsin, then it's home against Purdue, home against UCLA. Those are two tough games back to back, kind of early on. They do play Purdue right towards the end of the season as well, though. So we'll see. I kind of like the schedule. I like the draw that Rutgers got from that. So 4 teams left. We're going to jump to UCLA, our second of the West Coast teams. And yeah, new to the Big Ten. Let's see. So Washington at Oregon is their opening in December, like all the Pac-12 teams or Pac-4 teams, incoming teams, whatever you want to call them. I think I'm calling them the Pac-4. They're going to play each of the others twice. So Washington, Oregon, USC for UCLA. So for them, it's definitely looking more at what is their home road split at Illinois, at Indiana, at Purdue, at Rutgers. That's tough. Really, out of the top tier teams, the only one they have at home and not on the road is Michigan State. Michigan, they do have some of those like middling teams. Michigan State's not middling, but you know what I mean. Of like maybe not top tier. Michigan's in that group, like Iowa, Ohio State. That's a tough home road split for sure. At Rutgers, at Illinois, at Indiana, at Purdue, definitely not fun for that. Obviously, getting Washington twice is good. Oregon and USC are up in the air on what they exactly will be in first year of the Big Ten. So putting them kind of middling in terms of toughness, and this is definitely not an exact because it's not like I'm not remembering every single schedule as I go through. USC, another team that I will actually be able to identify who their double buys are. Let's see. Let's pull it up here for the Big Ten schedule. USC non-conference also not tough. I don't know if they play a game outside of California. They might. I don't know. So like I said, with all Pac-12 teams, for them, Oregon, Washington, UCLA twice. They have Oregon and Washington in their first 2 games. Looking at their home road splits, I would assume is the same as UCLA, right? At Illinois, at Purdue, at Indiana, at Rutgers. You're seeing this, right? Is because of that pod system where USC and UCLA. I'm going to pull that up too. I want to see if they like basically flip flop opponents within a week on their road trips. I believe they have it set up where these West Coast teams are just going to take 4 to 5 road trips, where basically they're on the road for like a week, but it's only has to be like 4 or 5 times. So, it's basically the same strength of schedule as UCLA, right? Like the exact same, I think. No, it's okay. So it is a little. Wait, is it this? Let's see. Hold on. I need 2 screens. Let's see. So, both obviously have Washington, Oregon as the first 2 games. Then coming back, it isn't like exactly the same. And this is where I think when I'm talking about the pod system, and how I think it was going to be used, it wasn't quite that. And what I thought was like Purdue and IU were going to be paired. And so say UCLA would play Purdue on a Wednesday, USC would play Indiana, and then they'd flip for the Saturday. It's not quite that. It's definitely more of a like just keeping teams regionally close, and just trying to do that. Now, like I think the exception is like Maryland and Rutgers. Those two, if you're playing them on the road, you're playing them back to back, and that's going to be pretty consistent. Same thing for like if Penn State, Ohio State can be thrown into that. But yeah, looking through, it's definitely not like they're not just like flip flopping games. It's definitely a bit of just kind of regionality and how that works. There's going to be probably some cases for that, but not a lot. So USC's they are going to play the same home and road teams though as UCLA. I'm going to put it as USC's. I think is going to be tougher than UCLA's, just because I think UCLA is going to be better than USC. And so I'll probably do a Big Ten preview sometime within the next month. I've been busting out all the team previews, team podcast previews. Iowa's was just posted today, so if you want to go check them out, definitely do that. I think I have, let me see. I have 12, or I have 11 of the teams premiered so far. So I have them pretty much all made. I'm just rolling them out at 2 a week. 11 of the teams previews are up on my YouTube, so definitely go check those out after this. Also, I mean, now I'm just kind of side note, but like I'm hoping to bring back live streams in season, and my kind of thought is that I'll be able to like live break down games and clips and players, and that's kind of the hope. We'll see what happens. I might try to do it for the first time, and then YouTube's just like, yep, copyright, and then you're done. So we'll see how that goes. Moving on to Washington. Right? Yeah, I don't think I've skipped anybody. 2 schools left, Washington and Wisconsin. Washington, the last of the 4 Pac-12 teams that I mentioned. So compared to, they should have pretty much the same as Oregon, right? So they have obviously the Pac-4 teams, like I said, they're going to play twice. They have Illinois, Purdue, Rutgers, Indiana, all at home. They have Oregon at home to close the season. On the road at Michigan State. So yeah, I think Oregon, Washington definitely got the better draw in terms of their home road splits for the non-Pac-4 teams. I think Oregon, Washington got the better one over USC and UCLA for sure. Obviously, it's the preseason. In 3 months, I could look stupid and everything's flipped because basketball. So, like I said, I think it's going to be pretty similar to Oregon's. I think it's definitely a really good break in terms of just who they have to play. Obviously, though, in terms of like the Pac-4 teams, playing Washington twice, at least on paper, is one of the quote unquote ones you probably want. So them not being able to play themselves makes it a little bit tougher as well. We will now jump to Wisconsin. 37 minutes, not bad. Like I said, I was trying to keep this definitely under an hour. And after I went through the first couple, I was very concerned that it was not going to be under an hour. Let's see. They did like a bobblehead reveal on their matchups on Wisconsin's website. I'm trying to pull up an actual legit schedule now. Shout out the bobbleheads though. It looks out back, but I just need a list of games right now. Is really all I need. And so far, just nothing showing up. This would be good. This would be a fitting way to end it. There it is. Okay, so I'm just waiting for stuff to load now. There we go. So December games is Michigan and Illinois. Home against Michigan, at Illinois, definitely a tougher draw there. There's a small percent chance I'm going to be able to figure out who they play twice. Iowa is definitely one of them. I'm trying to recall off the top of my head, but it definitely, I don't know if it's going to happen. Iowa's for sure one. Yeah, I don't think I'm going to be able to figure it out the way that this is listed and stuff. But just kind of looking through. So at USC, at UCLA, I think it's tougher. At Rutgers, they're at Purdue. At Illinois, that's a tough schedule too. At Michigan State, home against Indiana is they're probably one draw. That's a tough home road split. But looking at who they play twice, Minnesota, Iowa, and one other team. That kind of, getting Minnesota twice obviously is going to be in general a good thing. That's probably a team that will be towards the bottom of the Big Ten. I don't know if who is their third. Yeah, I don't know. But okay, so like I said, I think the home road split is tough. Some of their double games not the worst, so probably balances out a bit to them being towards the middle of the difficulty, I would say, in terms of just who they kind of have to play twice and stuff like that. And so, yeah, that is all 18 teams. I'm going to go through right now, and this is not exact because I didn't like physically compare schedule to schedule, but just kind of off the top of my head after the brief look through, going from toughest to easiest. So I think Michigan had the toughest draw, then Michigan State, Ohio State, Purdue, Indiana, Nebraska's top 6, I would say, for the toughest. USC, UCLA, Penn State, Wisconsin, Maryland, then with Washington for just kind of that middle 6. And then I think the easiest 6 is probably Illinois, Oregon, Rutgers, Northwestern, Minnesota, and Iowa with the easiest. And easy is going to be in quotes because all these schedules are going to be gauntlets. There's going to be way more travel. There's going to be a ton of good teams, like really 1 through like truthfully 1 through 18. Like I think every team can be good. Obviously, that's not going to happen, and there's going to be a couple teams that fall, but it's going to be the Big Ten again, where you probably have a top tier of 1 through 4 to 5. You're going to have this just muck in the middle of like every team's beating up on each other from 5 to 16 now, and then maybe 2 teams fall off at the bottom. And so when you look at them overall, right, it's going to, the standings are going to come down to a lot of like, who did you play twice? And I think kind of looking through the tough, like the strength of schedules, Illinois and Rutgers are 2 teams that are going to be projected top 5 in the conference. I think they got easier schedules as of right now to go with it. Purdue, Michigan State, 2 teams at the top. They got really tough schedules. Indiana's up there as well. USC, UCLA kind of mixed in. So it's going to be fun. I'm glad I was able to go through this. Yeah, like I said, I have a bunch of content coming out. If you're watching this, you probably already know about that and do watch that though. But I appreciate everybody tuning in. It was fun diving through, kind of being able just to go through the Big Ten schedule. We are 46 days away from November 4th, which is the opening of college basketball. We are about a month away or so. I can find out the exact date from exhibition starting. The first one being MSU, less than a month. MSU at Northern Michigan on October 13th. So that is less than a month away. Basketball is almost back. I'm excited for the type of content I'm going to be able to put out this year. And kind of continue to be able to get this thing to grow. So appreciate everybody tuning in, and I will catch you in the next one whenever that is.